Imagine finding out that the path everyone talks about, the one to getting rich. Well, maybe it isn't quite the whole story.
Uh-huh.
We've just spent a lot of time digging into this huge, like 70,000 word analysis. It covers millionaires, tons of financial data,
Right.
and honestly, some of the first things popping out are really head-turning.
Definitely.
So get ready, because in this deep dive, we are tackling what this research calls the 7 wealth paradoxes.
That's right. And, forget the usual advice you hear everywhere. This analysis, it's drawing from a really substantial pool of data, detailed studies, over 500 millionaires looked at.
Wow.
And it basically uncovers these fundamental misunderstandings people have about how wealth actually gets built.
Okay.
So today, we're really zeroing in on just the first two of these paradoxes. They're quite intriguing.
Okay, let's do it. Let's jump straight into the first one. It's called the hard work deception.
Yeah.
It almost feels wrong saying that, doesn't it?
It really does.
We're just constantly told, grind it out, put in the hours.
Mm-hmm.
But this research suggests, hang on, we need to look beyond just the effort itself. It points out this critical difference between, like, just working hard and what they call leverage.
Precisely. And maybe a concrete example helps here.
Yeah, good idea.
The analysis talks about someone like a really skilled lawyer, maybe billing, say, $500 an hour.
Okay.
Their earning potential is directly tied, it's capped, by the number of hours they can actually work, realistically.
Right. There's only so many hours in a day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, contrast that with maybe a software engineer. They develop some software, and maybe it starts generating, I don't know, $50,000 a month in passive income.
Okay, passive. Big difference.
Right. Their initial intense effort in creating the code, that continues to bring in revenue pretty much regardless of their working hours that specific month.
Ah, got it.
That's leverage. It's multiplying your output without, proportionally increasing your direct time.
And here's where it gets really interesting, I thought. The research mentions how our brains actually process this.
Mhm.
It references some MIT neuroeconomics work, suggesting our brains can sometimes confuse the feeling of putting in effort with actual productive progress.
Right.
Even if those hours aren't really giving you the best financial results, like, we get a little dopamine hit just for being busy.
That's a really crucial point. We can feel accomplished from long hours.
Yeah, totally.
But that feeling might actually hide whether the work is scalable or if it's building lasting wealth.
Makes sense.
And if you step back, look bigger picture, the analysis makes this interesting comparison. Think 19th century industrialists versus today's tech billionaires.
Okay.
Now, those industrialists, they definitely worked incredibly hard, no doubt. But their wealth was often tied to huge physical things, factories, big workforces.
Tangible assets.
Yeah. Modern tech giants, though, they often create platforms, technologies, things that can reach millions, maybe billions,
Instantly.
with, relatively speaking, much less ongoing direct effort from the founder themselves. That's leverage just operating on a massive, massive scale.
Okay, so this first paradox, the hard work deception, it's really challenging the idea that just being busy, just clocking endless hours is the automatic path.
Exactly.
It's more about actively finding ways to amplify your effort. Smart systems, technology, other kinds of leverage.
Well put. It's about working smarter, not just harder, essentially.
Oh, yeah, got it. Let's shift gears then. The second paradox, the education illusion.
Oh, yes.
This one also seems to fly in the face of what we're usually told.
It certainly does. We're, often led to believe that a degree from some fancy, prestigious university is basically your golden ticket.
The key, right?
But the data highlighted in this huge analysis we've been talking about, and it cites the National Study of Millionaires. It reveals that a really big majority, 67% of millionaires, did not graduate from those elite institutions.
67%.
Yeah.
That's a really striking number. It definitely makes you pause and reconsider that automatic link we draw between, top-tier schools and getting wealthy.
For sure.
And this ties into what the research calls the unlearning principle. What's interesting here is this idea that some of the very things we learn in traditional schools, they might actually be hurdles, obstacles to building wealth.
Exactly. Think about it. Traditional education often emphasizes, conformity, right? Sticking to the rules, following a fairly straight, risk-averse path.
Yeah, the safe route.
But building wealth often needs some unconventional thinking, spotting opportunities others miss, sometimes, challenging how things are usually done.
Right, like thinking outside the box.
Precisely. The analysis shares this really compelling story, a real-world example of someone who didn't even finish high school,
Wow.
but went on to build a $200 million dropshipping business.
200 million.
Yeah. Their success wasn't about a specific degree. It was about spotting a market need, acting decisively, often by questioning how traditional retail even worked.
That's incredible. And there's this quote in there, I think from a self-made millionaire, that really sticks with you.
Which one?
Schools teach compliance. Wealth requires rebellion.
Yeah. That's provocative.
Definitely provocative, but it forces you to think, doesn't it,
Yep.
about the different mindsets. What's encouraged in school versus what might be needed for, say, entrepreneurship or building real wealth.
It really does. And maybe this brings up a useful question for you listening right now.
Mm-hmm.
In what you're trying to achieve, are you mainly just focused on putting in the effort, the hours? Or are you actively looking for those leverage points?
Good question.
And also, could some of your sort of ingrained beliefs about needing a specific type of education, could they be maybe inadvertently limiting how you see wealth being created?
Yeah.
This first look into these wealth paradoxes really suggests the path might be, well, more complex and maybe surprisingly different from the standard advice we always hear.
So thinking back to that initial idea, that shocking secret,
Uh-huh.
we've started peeling back the layers, haven't we? Building wealth isn't just about working relentlessly hard or having that fancy diploma. These first two paradoxes, from the deep dive, the hard work deception, the education illusion, they really highlight how crucial leverage is and having that willingness to think differently, unconventionally.
Absolutely. And what's really interesting is to think about how these concepts might connect with your approach to learning, to reaching your goals.
Right.
Are you putting your energy where it can potentially give you exponential returns? Or are you maybe possibly stuck in just a linear effort kind of cycle?
Makes you think.
And how does your own education, formal or not, how might that be shaping your view of what's actually possible?
And like you said, this is just scratching the surface, right? Even though it feels pretty deep already.
Oh, definitely.
This whole 70,000 word analysis, we haven't even touched on things like the wealth operating system or psychological mastery.
Exactly. There are whole other layers about the practical systems, the mindset shifts that seem to be really key as well.
But understanding these first foundational paradoxes, it does offer a new lens, doesn't it?
It really does. A fresh perspective,
Mm.
not just on wealth, maybe, but on achievement in general.
Yeah,
It kind of encourages you to challenge your assumptions, look at alternative paths.
right.
So it really leaves you wondering, if just sheer hard work isn't the full picture and an elite education isn't essential,
Hmm.
then what are the fundamental drivers?
And maybe more importantly, how can you start weaving these kind of